Hello, wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation with CCW Europe, the podcast bringing together the brightest and leading minds in the world of customer management from across Europe. I'm Simon Hall, your host and industry analyst at CCW Europe, and today I'm delighted to be joined by two gentlemen from Zurich Insurance, Mike Essam, Head of Express Claims, and Graeme Mushet, Head of Express Motor Claims. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Delighted to have you on. Really excited to dive into the work that you're doing today. But before we get into that, I always like to set the stage by asking our guests to introduce themselves. So Mike, we can come to you first. You've been at Zurich for 15 years now, moving across various business units. So just tell us more about your journey and what's kept you at the company for so long.
Yeah, sure. So time has flown. So I've been at Zurich now for 15 years. I started my career in the life business, dealing with income protection claims, critical illness, and looking after our individual customers, but also our group customers as well. And then around 4 to 5 years ago, I moved over to the P&C side of the business, initially in relationship management, and then I've moved on now to running our attritional claims function for property, motor, looking after our high net worth clients, our navigators and general customers, and more recently our travel lines of business as well. So a lot of variety there.
Great stuff. And Graeme, you're relatively new to Zurich compared to Mike, joining in April of last year, having spent time at WNS and Aviva. So can you just talk us through your career path and some of the stepping stones you've taken to get to where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been at Zurich for about a year now, but prior to that, I started my career after a failed attempt at being a footballer, and went straight into sales and service. I then followed on and moved into the claims environment within Aviva, and I spent about 8 years at Aviva in different sites throughout the UK. And then after that, I was given an opportunity to work for WNS on behalf of Zurich. And I spent the last sort of 5 years doing that before I was given the opportunity to move to Zurich themselves. The WNS side of things gave me a great foundation in terms of business process management and potentially looking at things in a different way to the normal insurer would.
Well, I think we need another podcast to dive into your failed attempt at becoming a footballer.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Okay, we won't. So let's dive into the work that you're doing today then. And I think it's fair to say that insurance companies have been facing a number of acute headwinds over recent years, chief among them a digital transformation imperative. And in many respects, the insurance industry has been behind the curve when it comes to digital innovation at a time when consumers expect digital experiences. So against that backdrop, can you talk us through the technology/digital journey that you're on at the moment, Graeme? Perhaps we'll come back to you to kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main headline that I would focus on is simplification, really. Simplification and doing the basics of what we think is going to add the maximum value to our customer journey. I think within insurance, we've got all the shiny tools under the sun, but ultimately I don't necessarily think we place them in the right areas, or we haven't historically done that in the past. And for us within Express Claims at the moment, and within Zurich, it's about going back to basics and really understanding where those tools and those innovative solutions can fit in to our model and build our processes over and above those tools that we have in place. I think it's fair to say that we probably have made mistakes in the past in terms of where we've implemented them into the processes, and we've learned the hard way, I would say, but we're really reaping the rewards now. In terms of really building on those processes. I think we've got some great examples through our Hello Zurich platform, which is our video capability, and it allows us to hold live calls with customers, assess the losses, and try and progress the claim as quickly as humanly possible, so that not only can we support the customer in the best way we can, but it's a good outcome for them also.
And Mike, anything to add there?
Yeah, I guess so within Zurich, if you look at my job title, Head of Express Claims, it's not Head of Attritional Claims, and we call it Express deliberately to create that ethos really in terms of how we're doing things. So we want a nice, fast and efficient claims experience, and Graeme talked about simplification there, and it's about simplifying the interactions from a handler perspective to free up their time so they can really focus on providing an excellent service to the customers and using the digital tools to really augment that handler and support them in what they need to do, which is delivering that standout customer service experience. And then from a customer's experience, it's about removing friction from the journey, really. And, traditionally in a claims journey, you fill in your paper claim form, you send that to the insurer, letters or emails go back and forth, and those interactions happen. But what we've really sort of been trying to work within our digital sort of transformation is using digital tools throughout that journey to build extra value and remove some of those customer pain points. So if I look to our life business, income protection or critical illness claims, we no longer ask customers to fill in claims forms in that space. So instead, our customers will have an interview or a conversation, I should say, with our claims handler over the phone. It's a much more empathetic and supportive approach. Through our P&C claims journey, we are trying to digitise the interactions using text messaging to allow customers to get updates on claims and really just removing that friction and simplifying the journey from their perspective. So that's really where our focus is.
Well, you teed up my next question there, which was about striking the right balance between technology and people. Zurich is obviously a premium brand, and therefore your customers expect premium, personalized, customized interactions. So how do you maintain that level of premium service while simultaneously leaning into technology and specifically automation more and more? Mike, back to you maybe.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I talked a little bit about it before, but it's about looking at our handlers and the job they need to do and removing the friction or the elements of that process that makes it more difficult for them to deliver the service to their customers. So if I call an example of what I mean there, if I look in our property claims teams, historically the handler, when they get notification of a loss, they'd need to look at which suppliers they would need to appoint. They're not going to be able to provide an outcome to the customer necessarily on that call because they'll need vendors to come in, assess the loss and give a value before they can move forward. We're now equipping our handlers with digital tools. So Graeme mentioned Hello Zurich, our video calling tool. So the handler can see the actual loss on that call. They can step into the customer's house, understand the damage that's occurred, and then that gives them an immediately better view of how they should approach that situation. We have a loss adjustment toolkit that the handlers can use as well. So that will allow the handler to look at the loss in the customer's home and then be able to cost that loss and repair from their desktop with the customer still on the call, and they're able to offer an immediate settlement to that customer. And what that's allowing is empowering that handler to provide a really strong and positive outcome to that customer in one call, speeding up the process. There's some great efficiency improvements there. But we look at this more from the experience of the customer. They want to know their loss is covered, what the outcome will be, so they can move on with the repairs. And using digital tools in that way allows us to, as I say, augment that handler and allow them to get to the outcome that the customer wants as quickly as possible. So I think that's where a lot of our focus is going now. And I think in the past, AI is a really hot topic at the moment. We've worked with some AI startups and got to the point where we've had tools which can automatically settle a claim just off an electronic notification to us. And we found that delivered a great sort of level of customer satisfaction, but it was inferior to the level of satisfaction we can drive by putting a human being on that call with a customer and ultimately delivering the same outcome, not quite as quickly, but it's a much more personalised and human experience, which at claim stage is what I think people really, really want to see.
Yeah. Graeme, anything from your field that relates to that?
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that. I think we operate in such a unique environment whereby we don't just have a customer in front of us. We can sometimes have a broker, a representative from a council. We've got a varying degree, and what we've found is that right balance between understanding what that individual or that organisation requires to satisfy their customer journey throughout the course of the claim. A personal lines customer could be dealt with through live person, through text, but it may not be the same journey that's required. For example, a council, but we've done a really good job understanding what that looks like for these types of individuals that's coming through our sort of ecosystem. And you can clearly see that in the claims outcomes that we're generating, that it's not just one size fits all. We have the ability to shift and move in terms of the demand that's been placed on us.
And how are you making this shift to digital sustainable in the long term? How are you building conviction and buy-in across the organisation, and what training are you offering your staff?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a really unique environment within motor claims at the moment. We've just went through quite a large-scale restructure, looking at the pockets of work, where it needs to sit, where is it best sit in terms of delivering that service for the customer. We've just created a digital team within the motor claims function.
Mm.
And this is a really exciting sort of new venture. We have never done this in the past. And just to give an example of that all our live person chats are now ring-fenced within one team of really highly experienced claims individuals.
Mm.
And that the demand that's placed on that team, just like I just spoke about, is around you could get customer interactions, you get broker interactions, vendor interactions, and we're trying to suppress the contact via that method, not just to drive a strategy internally, but to understand where our pain points are, the themes, in terms of that demand that has been placed on us on a day-to-day basis, and that will stand us in good stead going forward. The way we had that in the past was it was kind of scattergun across the operation. We just kind of fit people into the role in terms of who wanted to do it. We never really gave robust training in terms of that, in which we've really focused some effort of late in terms of sort of behavioural science, the types of language to use on live person, and we're really starting to see the benefit come out the back of that in terms of how we can psychologically impact that interaction with the customer.
That's very interesting. And what about the management challenges associated with executing a digital transformation? Obviously, it's one thing to recognize a need to become more digital. It's another thing entirely to implement new systems and processes and challenges. So can you just talk us through some of the challenges you faced, some of the questions you've asked yourselves as you've gone through these journeys? Mike?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you can't get away from the fact that change is difficult and it's scary for people. Yeah. And as a claims function and an insurer, you've got long established processes that work really well. And we've got a hugely important job to do in terms of supporting our customers at times in their life when things are not going well.
Yep.
And we take that really seriously. And our handlers are enormously passionate about providing an excellent experience to our customers. We see the value of digital in supporting our handlers in delivering better outcomes to our customers. But injecting those digital tools into the function does cause a lot of uncertainty for people.
Yep.
So I think a lot of it's around the positioning of it. Probably a few years ago we were talking, and we're probably talking about now with AI coming in, replacing jobs, doing things that humans did. And a lot of the digital solutions that we now use, we're probably having a similar sort of approach and conversation around a few years ago. I think the reality is what those digital tools have done is made people's jobs more interesting. They've picked up a bit of the legwork for people. So I was talking about the life business. Someone's job used to be to send out claim forms. It's not a particularly exciting job for someone to do. It's far more interesting to be speaking to customers, delivering amazing outcomes to them. And, in that life claims, income protection, critical illness space, making a hugely impactful difference to people at the worst of times in their life.
Sure.
So that's really the task that we're moving people onto. And so I think for us, it's the positioning of what those digital tools will enable. I probably, through my career in different roles as well, I've seen digital tools being introduced, which sort of build complexity in, and probably, Graeme was talking about simplification earlier, but you can just introduce digital tools and just build complexity in a journey. If you add video calling to your phone calls, to your emails, to your text messaging, then all of a sudden it's just a lot more difficult.
Sure.
So what we've tried to do is to deeply integrate those tools in our processes. So as an example, for some of our personal lines, home customers, when it's a property loss, if they elect to communicate with us through a digital channel, we only communicate them through a digital channel, through text messaging. And we found there that we moved a claims journey that was 2 or 3 weeks long into a 13-minute journey. And we were able to quickly settle those claims. The handlers found that really positive because they were able to provide really good, positive outcomes to customers who were delighted, much quicker, much easier, and they had ownership. So it's about creating that connection so that your handlers and your staff can see the value that those tools will bring to them. And it's almost not what they will lose from the journey, it's about what they will gain. And one of the areas in terms of training of handlers that we've really invested in is around the behavioural science and saying, because we're able to remove some of the effort that you'd go to in terms of the administrative parts of the job you can refocus your effort on the more complex sort of conversation with the customer. So using behavioural science techniques, and we've reviewed all of our conversations to say, well, which parts of those conversations are bringing value to the customer, which aren't. How do we answer the call in the most positive way to reassure customers? How do we end the conversation in the best way so that customers understand what will be happening next, and just building more positive and powerful experiences? And from a handler perspective, you know, it's building an amazing skill set in them, you know, because our claims handlers have experience with behavioural science and are able to manage conversations in an expert way to deliver superior customer experiences. And they are experts in using digital tools to provide amazing level of satisfaction to customers. And these are really marketable skills. Absolutely, so I think for me, it's about just creating that connection, you know, so people can understand the buy-in and what they're going to get out of it, not just what they're potentially going to lose.
Yep. Graeme, any challenges you've encountered?
I think the unique, if I look back in my career, which I've worked all of my career in insurance, if I look back when I joined insurance when I was 18, there was this sort of stigma around your progression, sort of developing your career, your skills, your knowledge was all around technical capability. So it was all about what you knew in terms of the claims process, sort of litigation, all that sort of stuff, really complex activities. But what I've really found a shift in the last sort of 15 years is around, in actual fact, it's all about the service that we provide to our customers, and unlocking those avenues and using the tools that allow us to bring the customer through that journey. And it's quite interesting now, because I would say technical knowledge is always going to be relevant. It's really important in the claims journey, and you always have scenarios in the claims journey where it's relevant. But in actual fact, in the environment that we operate in, which is 95% of the incoming claims volumes that we receive within Zurich, it's about understanding the customer's needs, taking them through that journey, managing their expectations accordingly, which we do very well through the use of our digital tools, along with trying to reduce the failure demand that's coming into our centres to allow our customers to get the time with the handlers that they really require in the time of need. And I think that's the difficulty in the transition of bringing that to life for our frontline staff. Because you will place a nice shiny tool in front of them, you will try your best to explain to them why we're introducing it. But it's really about bringing to life the advantages in the round, as opposed to just, here's a nice tool, this is what you do. It would really help us if you used it. And I think we've done a really, really good job of bringing that to life for our people. And they can clearly see the results. And I think the dynamic with the types of customers that we insure within Zurich, large organisations, it's all about the relationship between us and our customers. It gives us that extra layer of opportunity to sit down with the customer and not only bring it to life for them, but work in a more sustainable relationship with them over a period of time, and enhancing that relationship through our capability, which I think is a really unique proposition in the market.
That's great. And speaking of results, how are you measuring or benchmarking the success of your initiatives? You mentioned a few moments ago how you're able to reduce the time it takes to resolve a claim by a few minutes. So are you able to show the impact that your transformation is having on the business?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess we'd measure it in a few different ways. We talked about the example there, which for simple property claims, we're now able to give the customer an outcome in a few minutes, right, in the process that would have been a few weeks long. I think within that, you know, we gain efficiency improvements within that, which is always, you know, a great success for us. But we're probably more interested in the customer outcome of that, which is, you know, for that customer, we've made a bad situation much, much easier by resolving it really, really quickly. And that's really where a lot of our focus is, on that sort of speedy and efficient settlement of claims wherever possible. We are pretty obsessed with transactional net promoter score. We have delivered an amazing improvement in TNPS, which we are super proud of over sort of last 18 months. I think it's somewhere around sort of a 50-point improvement. And, you know, we are constantly looking and challenging ourselves in ways that we can drive more value. Of course, the customer experience is probably one of the main metrics we focus on. But we also, you know, we're very conscious of our obligations to our shareholders and other stakeholders. And so, making sure we're delivering a really fantastic indemnity result and delivering value across the whole life cycle of the claim in all areas is really important to us.
Mm-hmm. Graeme, anything specific in motor claims?
I mean, it's difficult to say just now because of the sort of restructure that we're going through, but I think it's important to talk about why we're doing that restructure, and it's all been around the feedback from our customers, our brokers, and even our handling community around the fragmentation of our model. So I think if you look at, we have provided a fantastic service to our customers in motor within the last 5 years, but in actual fact we've done that through a broken model, I would say. And I think that this is going to unlock some doors that we've never really had access to in the past. About it's essentially a one-stop shop for your customer or your broker when they come into our centre when you make a motor claim. And a big part of that is the changing of culture, and I think it's important to call that out. The challenges we've had with a fragmented structure has been that the lack of ownership, the lack of accountability that's been driven into our teams. What this will now do is it will allow us to answer any query, drive any sort of query that we get through to conclusion, but managing customer expectations at the same time. And we will do that either through voice, but we will also complement that through the digital journey at the same time. That will take time to embed. We'll learn some things through that transition. We'll probably get some things wrong, but we'll fail, and we'll fail fast, and we'll move on. And I think it's quite an impressive transition that we've just went through, because we have made mistakes, but we have learned from them quickly. But what we have seen is some incredible results out the back of it in terms of being able to make liability decisions quicker. We've been able to increase the amount of vehicles that we're steering into our own network, which I think is really positive. So all the indicators that we're looking at, including our TNPS score, which is still sitting around the plus 65 mark, which is a really, really good score, they're all pointing in the right direction, which is telling me we've done something right, but equally our core metrics are heading in the right direction as well. And with our new live digital team in place, it is just absolutely thriving in terms of its own individual score, which is sitting at plus 88, which is market leading in my eyes, considering we're so new into the transition.
Excellent. Okay, and final question on this subject before we move on, and that is, given everything that we've talked about there around digital transformation, the challenges, the training, etc., what advice or key takeaways would you give to other peers in the industry who might be undergoing a similar transformation project? Graeme, come back to you.
I mean, I may be different to others, but my sort of main motto is don't be afraid to fail. I think we've probably got a lot of things wrong. We've probably made some wrong decisions, but we've learnt from them. We've learnt from them really fast. I think it is important to call out, and this is just from my own experience, is that insurers in particular within claims departments are really risk averse. I think we look at things typically in a sort of claims lens as opposed to a customer experience lens. And I think that's what's making us stand out from the rest at the moment, in terms of we are really putting the customer lens on the decisions that we're making, but we're equally looking at it from a handling lens and bringing that sort of hybrid version of both together. And it's a unique proposition we have now, but just don't be afraid to make decisions, and don't be afraid to fail and fail fast. But be quite bold in your decisions, because I think the insurance market, particularly claims, have got a chance to really stand out from the rest, given that, well, let's be honest, in a motor claims journey, a customer's calling you because they need your help. They're either stuck at the side of the road, they've lost their vehicle. It's one of the top 5 losses that somebody would experience in their lifetime. We don't have to live by the rules almost. I'm not saying we break the law, but we do. We build our processes around making that as seamless as possible for our customer, with minimal touch points, and I think it's not difficult to achieve that.
Mike, any key takeaways?
Yeah, I'd agree very much with what Graeme's saying. I think unless you make a few mistakes and do a few things wrong, you're not pushing hard enough or fast enough. So I think a few things going wrong is a good thing, and it proves you're doing enough. I think generally you've got to be passionate about what you do, and you need to go into it with the right mindset. And what I mean there really is that you know, if you're saying, right, we want a digital journey, you need to think about why you want a digital journey. Is it because you want lots of shiny digital tools to talk about on podcasts? So we all do. But also is, you know, it's what's the outcome? Do you want to make life easier for your staff, your handlers, or, you know, do you want to drive these differentiated, excellent experiences for your customers? And I think getting buy-in on that and setting that vision is really important. I think, you know, through the tactical deployment of various digital tools, you can just build lots of complexity into your journey and not really move yourself forward, but you can have some cool stuff to talk about. I think you need to set out a strategy ultimately of what you want to achieve, you know, what the outcome's going to be, and then use digital to really move you along that journey. So it's almost, you know, probably less a digital strategy for me, and it's more of a customer experience strategy of which digital forms a really crucial component. And that's the advice I give to people. Sort of go into it, you know, and think about what you want to get out of the end.
Sound advice indeed. So let's change subject now and look at customer vulnerability. You've touched upon it a couple of times, Mike, and I know it's a massive one for you guys, just given the nature of your business, and it's one that is increasingly top of mind for a great many companies across different sectors. So broad question, what work are you doing in this area? How are you putting customers' well-being at the heart of everything you do?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that is a massive question. It's a topic which is occupying our thoughts more and more all the time. We're putting more focus in. Just to put it in context for the work that we do as an insurance company, you know, within life claims, which is where I spent a lot of my career, you're dealing with people who have very serious and significant health conditions which have got a massive impact on their life. Yep. In our P&C claim space where I work now, you know, you're dealing with people who suffered significant losses a lot of the time for things which are incredibly valuable to them, and in a range of different circumstances. So you immediately build in an enormous amount of vulnerability at every stage of that. To then really identify which customers are vulnerable within there just becomes incredibly complicated. Sure. So I think for us, you know, we look at every single claim on its merits. And I think speaking to customers, personalising that journey as much as possible, getting a real life, super experienced, excellent claims handler on the phone to understand the specific challenges that individual is massively important. To really understand what we need to be doing to support that individual at that moment in their life. Yeah. So we've really got that framework, and what we look to do is to bespoke the claim service as much as we possibly can around that individual to take care of their individual needs. Alongside that, some specifics, we have a separate team that specifically look after customers identified as having aspects of vulnerability. We call them our cuddle calls as part of that. And that is a call where if you are identified by a claims handler at the beginning of your claims at the F&L stage, then the next day someone will call you up to check how you are. And it's as simple as that. They're not phoning to progress your claim or to ask any more information, but it's simply to say, did you understand everything that happened yesterday? Do you understand what will be happening with your claim? Is there anything that's missed? Is there anything more we can support you with? We also have a range of support services there. So any Zurich customer who's accessing the claims service can benefit from free counselling at our cost should they need it, and a range of other services outside of the insurance arrangement, but just to support that individual as a person. So we're doing some really brilliant work. I think it's one of those topics, though, where there will always be more to do, but it's definitely an area that's hugely important to us, and we're working really hard to continue to build on that experience for customers and make sure that any customer that contacts Zurich has a really fantastic experience regardless of their circumstances or their ability to deal with that claim.
And just following on from that, looking internally, what practices or strategies have you put in place to help your frontline staff manage difficult situations and manage emotive conversations? Graeme?
And I think Mike touched on it earlier as well, around the sort of behavioural science element of the training that we focus on giving our handlers. But there's so many different mechanisms, whether it be from just having that weekly reminder with your staff on the front line, through regular conversations, both collectively and individually. But we have a massive infrastructure suite of facilities available within Zurich itself to help individuals support through conversations like that. I think it is important to call out, particularly in the motor space, that arguably every customer that makes a claim is vulnerable in the situation that they're in. However, it's the authenticity around that conversation that you have with the customer at the other end of the phone during that initial conversation, and being able to draw out those additional vulnerabilities other than the event that they're experiencing at that time, and really going above and beyond to support them through that, not just for the purposes of the claim, but just general life more than anything else, that we want to be there for our customers when they really need it.
Okay, great. Last question then before we look to the future, and it's a niche one around your sustainability initiatives. I know Zurich has bold ambitions around becoming one of the most responsible, impactful businesses in the world. So how does that mandate factor into your customer-facing work?
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's a massive topic, one which increasingly we're finding that our customers are more and more interested in. And of course, within Zurich, we've got a really wide range of customers, personal lines, high net worth, through to all of our commercial customers and working with some of the biggest businesses, as well as our municipal book as well, which is all the councils and other institutions that we all rely on day to day. And more sustainability is featuring in their agenda. So within claims specifically, we're doing a lot of work in the motor space. In Graeme's teams, we have our Green Parts initiative, so that you can select to have your car repaired from recycled parts, recovered from other vehicles, reducing down the impact of those repairs on the environment. In our property space, we're looking more at areas where we can repair damage rather than replace like for new. And when we talk about repair, we're talking about a very expert service that returns an item to as good as new condition. So escape of water is a massive issue for the whole industry in terms of the costs. One of the services we're offering to customers there is when we're reinstating properties after a flood, is to allow customers to use part of the cost of that claim to install interventions in the property that will reduce the impact of further flooding or help prevent further flooding. So if you're going to have a £40,000 kitchen replaced, you might elect to have a £30,000 kitchen, and the other £10,000 could be spent on measures to improve the resilience of your property to flooding. So in that area as well, just looking for ways we can work within the policy to provide better outcomes for customers. But again, it's an area where there's lots of more work to do, and we're continuing to look for areas where we can introduce new services and new approaches which will drive value for our customers.
And to bring us home then, gentlemen, what's coming next for you in terms of improving the brand experiences for your customers? What are you doing to future-proof your business? Graeme?
For me personally, it's just really about taking the restructure of the motor claims department to a level in which we are comfortable that the amount of rework, duplication, customer touch points, and the non-value add activity is almost at an all-time low. We want to be in a position where if you are stuck at the side of the road and you make a claim, that initial call where you report that loss to us, there is no further need after that point to make any further contact with us, and it's all proactive claims management, either via the individual that's dealing with your claim or through our digital capability. And we want to have the ability to make it as easy as possible to report that claim. And there will be circumstances where individuals probably won't want to go through the digital route, but we still have the capability of speaking to them on the telephone, and vice versa with the digital capabilities. And we'll have a really well-rounded customer journey, and it will be seamless.
Sounds good. Mike, last words on the future?
Yes, probably two bits for me.
Go for it.
The first one probably sounds a little bit boring, but I think super important. It's around operational resilience. So a big focus for me. I've talked about the different customers that we operate. The needs of a personalised customer are very different from the needs of some of our large global corporates that we work with that sit within our remit. But what we're really focused on is understanding what works well, where we can build consistency, and drive an operational model that is less fragmented, and more able to respond to peaks in demand and workloads. And also looking at, where we've implemented some of the digital tools and that's worked really, really well, understanding where we can replicate that in other areas of the business. So not providing a one level of service for all, but leveraging the value of the innovation in different areas and making sure that we're using that across customers as consistently as possible to give us a really strong model so that we are always there for our customers when they need us.
Yep.
And I guess the other piece for me flows on quite nicely, and it's just about continuing to build on that customer experience. And we are super proud of the movement in our TNPS score, the positive customer experiences that we're driving. I talked before about our focus on TNPS. We have weekly meetings where we look at the feedback in the last few days because we've got an amazing score, but it's not 100. So that says some customers are not having the sort of experience we want them to have in every single interaction. So we look at that feedback every single week and we're making changes every single week to continue to tweak that service. So that other imperative for me is just to continue to build on that service. We're in a good place, but we can't rest on our laurels and just say that's good enough. We need to continue that progression, looking out for new and innovative ways to serve our customers that's going to drive that greater level of satisfaction with them. So those would be my two areas of focus when you ask for one.
Yeah, great way to finish. Mike, Graeme, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for taking us on a whirlwind tour through the work that you're doing at Zurich Insurance.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
So that brings to a close this episode of In Conversation with CCW Europe. But please do stick around on the CCW Europe website and social media channels where you can find so much great content related to customer management and the customer experience. Thank you so much again to Mike and Graeme for joining me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, goodbye.